Hello, everybody. In this very strange experience to give a plenary by remote, I would like first to thank Stefan and Wolfram for inviting to give this plenary. But I would like also to thank all the local organizers who have been very disappointed by not being able to welcome you in Paris. By the way, the topic of my presentation is about geometry of robot motion, and I entitle From the Rolling Car to the Rolling Man. In some sense, it gives an account of my research for more than 45 years. And to start, I would like to restart the problem statement, perhaps in a non-conventional way, by referring to the famous mathematicians Poincaré. Poincaré, I think, has been one of the deepest scientists that try to think about what is an action. As you know, of course, robots are machines acting in the physical world. What does it mean, in fact? Let us consider the three spaces that Poincaré introduced to try to better understand our own actions when we move and act in the space, in the world. Let us consider, for instance, this instruction, take a glass. This sentence is expressed in the space, which is the physical space. But we don't have a direct access to the physical space. We access the physical space only through our sensory space, and it's possible for us to take the glass. That means to move in the space thanks to our motor space. And the nervous system is making the link between these three spaces. And this is exactly the same for a robot. A robot has sensors, has motor, and the equivalent of the brain or the nervous system is the computer. And what Poincaré say is that robot action, in some sense, is a matter of space inversion. And this is the motion that makes the link between these three spaces. And what is said is that experience guides us in the choice, which it does not impose on us. It makes us recognizing not what is the truest geometry, but what is the most convenient one. That means that from the point of view of Poincaré, geometry is the core concept to realize, to understand the relationship between these three spaces, which are the physical space, the sensory space, and the motor space. He gave a lot of examples that are explained in a short text I recently wrote to develop this idea of Poincaré. But in fact, the concept is well known for roboticists at least at the first glance. I mean, everybody knows about the configuration space. The configuration space is a concept which has been borrowed from the mechanics to better understand the relationship between the motor space and the physical space. And the introduction, seminal introduction, has been done by Thomas Lozano Perez in the early 80s. And then if you are considering in the physical space this system with two bars, the placement of this system is characterized by two angles, and the space that gather the two angles is a torus. That means that if you want to solve a motion planning problem, for instance, how to go from that position to that position here, the translation of this problem is how to go from that point to that point here. In some sense, you transform the 3D system into a point in the configuration space. And of course, it's much easier to plan a path for a point than for a 3D mechanical system. Then you solve the problem in the configuration space by some algorithm. Then you find some collision-free path to avoid that. And by following that path, you get the motion, okay? Then let us follow that path, and you see on the left the motion that avoid the obstacle. If we are now considering a more sophisticated system like an anthropomorphic system, the configuration space is composed by the placement space and the posture space. What is the posture? The posture gives you the shape of the body. And the posture are mainly characterized for anthropomorphic system by a set of internal body variables, like here, while you have to add the placement space that tell you where you are. And for that, you need three external variables, two for the position and one for the direction. What appears in the case of the anthropomorphic system is that the placement itself is not actuated. That means that to move yourself in the space, you only access the internal variable of your body, and the motor space only access the posture. And this is by changing your posture. That means, for instance, by putting your left foot in front of the left one, then it's possible to walk, okay? Then that means that there is no specific motor to walk. That means that the system is under-actuated for the locomotion, while for the manipulation, it could be redundant. Okay, you have a lot of degrees of freedom to take a glass on a table. Okay, too much control, too much variable to do that. Then the main characteristic of the anthropomorphic system is that there are both under-actuated and redundant. Okay, let us give a short summary at this stage. With the configuration space approach, we say that any motion for the 3D mechanical system in the physical space appears as a collision-free path for a point in the configuration space. Great. Then now the question will be how to compute a path in the configuration space. Computing a path is a geometric problem. It integrates, for instance, topology. Is it possible to go from a position to another one? How many connected components have the configuration space? How to compute them? How to compute a path? All these questions has a geometric nature. And what Poincaré said, try to find not the truest geometry, but the most convenient one. Okay. In this presentation, I will make some emphasis on the geometries of rolling, not the geometry of rolling, but the geometries of rolling. There are several types of geometry as we will see. Okay, and to start, I would like to give a tribute to my mentor, Georges Giralt, who has been a pioneer in robotics research. And this is a picture which has been taken in the 90s here somewhere in California. Here is Georges and myself here just after my PhD. Okay, and one day exactly in 85, Georges went to me and said, "Hi, Jean-Paul, did you see that Hilard has wheels?" And Hilard at the time was this mobile robot here with two driving wheels. Okay, then this was one of the very first mobile robot. And Georges told me, "You see that Hilard has wheels?" Mm-hmm. And I answer, "What do you mean?" "I don't know," say Georges. "Hilard rolls without sliding." Okay, and then? And Georges said, "Any pass in the Hilard's configuration space is not necessarily admissible, isn't it?" Oh, and myself, I see. Then the configuration space does not apply. And Georges told me, "I think so." It was at this moment, you have to consider that the configuration space approach was mainly dedicated to robot manipulator. And that means that for for industrial applications, and but not very not applied directly for the mobile robot. And then, in fact, by introducing this constraint of rolling without sliding, Georges introduced these famous differential equations. These differential equations just tell you that if you are considering a wheel, if you are considering a car, and if you are considering a walking man, it appears that the tangent to the trajectory followed by the wheel, the car, or the man is supported by the direction of the body. The tangent to the trajectory is supported by the direction of the body. And you write that in terms of geometry, and this is this differential equation. Okay. And then now I would like to develop how this formulation or just this statement apply for several cases, including the rolling cars and the rolling man. And in fact, the success in solving that problem has been to consider a specific geometry, which is the non-holonomic geometry. Then what is the problem? At that stage, with the configuration space approach, we say that any admissible motion for the 3D mechanical system appears as a collision-free path for a point in the configuration space. But what about the converse? At first glance, I will say that the converse is true for holonomic system, and it is not true for non-holonomic system. Okay, then this is a very brief approach. This is it should be a little bit more developed. In fact, the concept of holonomy is a mathematical question of integrability of differential equations. Let us compare these two systems here. Here, you have a watch with two main hands, and here there is a car. the car, as we have seen, is submitted to this differential equation that say that the tangent to any admissible trajectory is supported by the direction of the car. Here I introduce a very simple differential equation. So you have two main hands here, the blue one, forget about the yellow one, just the blue one. We can say that the velocity of the little hand is 1/12 the velocity of the big one. It's quite natural. Then we have two differential equations. And obviously that one is integrable. And that one, what about that one? Oh, well, is it integrable or not? But in fact, the question is, what do you mean by integrable? What do you mean by it's possible to integrate the differential equation? What is the true meaning of that? And the true meaning of that is the following. If you are considering the watch with the two arrows, then two angles, then the configuration space is a torus. And here you see the time passing. You see what is the accessible space for the two hands of the watch. And as you can see that the dimension of the reachable space is not the entire torus, is not two, it's only one, obviously, but the notion of integration, then the integration of these differential equations, as a consequence that the dimension of the reachable space is only one and not two. That means that, for instance, if you are considering this position of the hands, okay, and it appears that it is not accessible. That means that your watch will never show you that position of the hands here. This time will never happen. Again, the dimension of the reachable space is one, and the dimension of the manifold is two. This system is integrable, it's holonomic. While if you consider that system here, okay, which is the car system, by experience, we know that it's possible to park a car. That means that even if the car is submitted to this differential equation, the dimension of the reachable space is not reduced, is exactly the same dimension as the manifold X, Y, and theta space. Okay, then this system is non-holonomic. One of the key concepts to try to not only to understand, but to be effective from a robotics point of view is the concept of small space controllability. Give me just 1 minute to explain that concept. Here you consider a point in the configuration space of any kind of system, and here this is a neighbor of this point, small one if you want, and you ask the following question: is it possible for my system to reach that point here without escaping the neighbor? And here in this case, the answer is yes. Okay, and what about that point here? And you are trying to do that. That point is accessible, but there is no way to access this point without escaping the neighbor. Then there are two types of points: the points which are reachable without escaping the yellow neighbor, and the points which are reachable but without avoiding to escape the neighbor. If the space of points which are reachable from the starting point without escaping the neighbor is itself a neighbor, then your system is said to be small space controllable. To give you a picture, an example of this concept, let us compare the car-like system. And here I consider a car on the left that moves both forward and backward. On the right, I consider a car that moves only forward. For a car moving only forward, if you are considering a huge empty space, it's possible to go everywhere. And your system is non-holonomic. It's possible the dimension of the reachable space is 3, and for a car moving only forward. But the main difference is that here, if you are considering the shape of the reachable space for a small size, then we are in the 3-dimensional configuration space, X, Y, and theta space. And this is the shape of the reachable space here. That means that this looks like a 3D object that contains the starting point here, while here the starting point is here. And you can see that for a small radius of this system, for this metric, it appears that the reachable space does not contain the starting point. That means that the car that moves both forward and backward is a small space controllable, while the car that moves only forward is not small space controllable. Now I would like to explain why this concept is very useful. I say that the configuration space cannot be applied directly on a system which are non-holonomic. But if your non-holonomic system is a small space controllable, then in that case, if you consider any path in the configuration space, which is not necessarily feasible, by applying the property of the small space controllable, it's possible to compute a pavement of that path. And then by extracting that, it's possible to compute a path that will approximate any given path. Any given collision-free path can be approximated by a sequence of collision-free admissible paths. Admissible in the sense for the car that respect the constraints of rolling without sliding. Then now you have two central questions. Is my system non-holonomic first, and is my non-holonomic system small space controllable? And for that, there are very powerful mathematical results. The first one is related to the Frobenius theorem, while the second one, you can check if your system is a small space controllable by using the famous Lie algebra rank condition. I don't want to enter in more details at this level. Okay, and then if I go back to the car-like system, the car that moves forward and backward, we have been in some sense very lucky to have we have been able to solve the problem by considering optimal control. And in 90, Reeds and Shep provide the optimal path, optimal in the sense that optimal length path for a car that moves forward and backward. And in addition to that, another constraint was a lower bound on the turning radius. Then this gives you that kind of path. And from that characterization is that it had been possible to compute exactly the shape of the reachable space for the car, for the Ritz-and-Shep car, if you want. And this is a work I did with my former student, now is a senior researcher, Philippe Souer, in his thesis. And here is the shape of the reachable space with various radius. You have to think as a wave front in the 3D space, the 3D in the sense X, Y, and theta. Then, this is the shape of the ball with 3 different radius here. And from that, it is possible to prove, not only to prove that it's possible to park a car, but with that methodology, it's possible to approximate any path by making maneuver. And more than that, the study of the non-holonomic metric gives you a theorem that says that the number of maneuvers to park your car varies as the inverse of the square of the free space. Then this is a very accurate result. Okay, then this gives you the computational complexity of the motion to park a car. Okay, and then now if we add a trailer, then the problem becomes more complicated because we have been not able to solve the optimal control for that kind of a system. We don't know what are the optimal trajectory for that. Then we have to take another point of view, and the main contribution after the introduction of the chain form system by mainly by Richard Murray and Sankar Sastry in Berkeley. This has been the concept of the flatness, which has been introduced by the French school of automatic control by Michel Fliess, Pierre Rouchon, and other colleagues. Then what is the main concept of a flatness? If I consider this mobile robot with a trailer, then the configuration space is 2 for the position of the robot, and 1 for the direction of the robot, and 1 for the direction of the trailer. Then the dimension of the configuration space is 4. While the dimension of the control, there are 2 driving wheels, it's only 2. Okay, then the car is a system, a 3-dimensional system with 2 controls. The mobile robot with a trailer is a 4-dimensional system with 2 controls. Okay, and let us consider now just the variables that the coordinates of the point, the middle point here of the trailer. Let us imagine that you know the trajectory of this point. Then this is that kind of the trajectory. Because the trailer is rolling, then you know what is the direction of the trailer. Then you know, in some sense, where is the position of the mobile robot. But you don't know a priori the direction of the robot. And now, if you are considering the trajectory, but with the center of curvature, then a simple geometric construction gives you the point here, which is the location of the middle point of the robot. But more than that, it's possible to compute the tangent to the trajectory, then the direction here of the mobile robot. That means that just by giving you 2 variables and the first and the second derivative of these variables, it's possible to rebuild the entire state of the system here. Okay, then my system is said to be flat. Okay, and of course, we prove that this system is a small space controllable by using the Lie algebra rank condition, blah, 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 blah. But the question now is how to go from a point to another one, how to reach the blue point and the green one. And the clever idea, which has been developed by Florent Lamiraud during his thesis, is roughly the following one. If you consider that picture here, that geometric construction, it appears that if the first trajectory here of the trailer and the second one are an arc of circles, if both follow an arc of circles, that means that the angle between the trailer and the mobile robot will remain constant. Let us call this trajectory a canonical trajectory. That means that for any points in the configuration space, there are canonical trajectories like this. And the idea of Florent Lamiraud has been to make a convex combination of both trajectory. Of course, I forget all the technical detail to see how to build a convex combination of these two curves. It's possible to account for a steering method that verifies the small space controllability property of this system. And it can be applied for a mobile robot with trailer. And here we are in the 1997 Atlas. And this was the first time that a mobile robot with a trailer was able to park itself while, of course, using the sensor. I didn't mention at that time the sensory space, but the guarantee for obstacle avoidance is given by the presence of a laser rangefinder. That means that all this trajectory has been computed from a pre-compute map of the environment, and the control is guaranteed by using a proximity sensor to avoid the obstacles. Okay. Just to mention that there remains some very challenging open problem. If you are considering that system here, which is exactly the same as the previous one, but with two trailers, and this specific system, it is possible to prove that it's a small space controllable, there is no problem, but we don't know how to go from a point to another one. I mean, we don't know by a closed form equation. Of course, we may apply numerical computation to do that, but at that stage, I would like remain in the line of trying to understand the underlying geometry of this system. Okay. Then how to go from a position to another one in a closed form fashion, closed form equation, we don't know. The problem is completely open. Okay, and it may appear strange that the same concept apply in this experiment dealing with the HRP2 robot. Here, the problem is to go through the wall. The question here is not a problem of motion planning by itself. That means what kind of posture I have to take to go through this wall by itself. Then this is, we suppose that the motion planning problem has been solved. That means that we get a collision-free path. No, the problem here is how to design a control that does not escape a tube around that path here. And the control, which has been designed here, verify the condition of the small space controllability at this level. Okay, then this is exactly the same concept here. To summarize, together with my colleague Nicolas Mansart and Jean-Bernard Larcer, we published quite recently, 5 years ago, 2 review papers on the optimal motion for in robotics. Okay, then now let us go back to the anthropomorphic body. We have seen that is both under-actuated and redundant. First problem, how to combine underactuation and redundancy. Is it possible? What do I mean by that? Walking to grasp. Obviously, if we ask a robot to grasp an object, the robot has to go to the table where the object is, and then to grasp the object. Then you have, roughly speaking, two modules, one for the locomotion, one for the grasping or the manipulation. But is it possible to combine both in a single module to realize tasks which are not obviously decomposable in terms of locomotion and grasping? Then how to combine underactuation and redundancy? And this has been another PhD student, Oussama Kanoun, who had this clever idea here. You give a look to the robot that is walking to grasp an object on the floor. Then the action is finished here, okay? Let us give a look. Here you have the stepping of the robot. Then consider the stack of steps here as a virtual manipulator, as a kind of accordion that can be deployed on the floor here. That means that if you are considering the configuration space of the HRP2 robot, that means that the posture space, whose dimension is roughly 30, plus the placement space, whose dimension is 3, x, y, and theta, which is rather complex because the dimension of the configuration space is 33. Don't be afraid, add some additional virtual variables here, which are the variables of this virtual manipulator. In some sense, you are making a lifting of the configuration space by adding a lot of variables here to account for a virtual manipulator which is attached to the body of the robot. And how it works. By doing that, your system becomes hyper redundant. And then you first solve the problem just by using the classical linear algebra, which is used for redundant system, by using the inverse kinematics, blah, 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 blah. Then the steps are sliding on the floor, and after that, you keep the steps which are necessary to grasp the object, then in the two steps. And in this experiment here, a real experiment on the real HRP2 robot, the small step backward the robot is making has not been computed in advance. This is just the output of a general grasping module that integrate the possibility of locomotion. Let us now consider bipedal walking. Walking is a very complex task in terms of the computational complexity of the motor space, since we have more than 700 muscles in total, and to control only 3 variables. And how the brain is able to control, to face this complexity just to control only 3 variables. Of course, there are muscles that are completely not useful for walking. For instance, the muscles controlling my face. For instance, there are obviously no incidence on the control of the variables. Then, in some sense, the brain has to choose what are the best one and how to make that selection. In terms of biomechanics, we are looking at the synergies of the control system for walking. And we had the following intuition to observe when a person is walking, to observe the motion of the center of mass. And to do that, we use some classical techniques that combine motion capture to capture the kinematics of the body, of the walking body. And we combine that with a force plate that gives you some information about the force which are applied on the floor by the body. And by making this combination, which is quite not easy to do, and for that we introduce with Justin Carpentier and Mehdi Benaleg sophisticated filter to have a good estimation of the center of mass. I don't want to enter into the details, but the results is the following one. It appears that the center of mass follow a tronchoid. A tronchoid is a specific type of cycloid, the one in the middle here. That is the motion of a point which is inside a wheel, okay, and which is at some distance of the center of the wheel, okay. And it appears that by studying several subjects, I don't remember exactly, but 10 subjects walking, for all of them, the trajectory of the center of mass follow a specific tronchoid. In fact, the tronchoid is characterized by the height of some table, okay, which is represented here by the blue line, and a small wheel, okay, whose radius depends on the subject you are considering, and the third parameter is the distance between the center of mass and the center of the wheel. That means that all the locomotion of a walking person can be characterized by only 3 parameters. And this gives you this walking control synergy that gives you a summary of all the mechanical complexity. And what is nice with respect to the topic I am addressing here is that we can deduce that we are not walking, we are rolling in that sense. In that sense, that means that the center of our mass, when we are walking, follow a trajectory which is induced by a rolling wheel, a small rolling wheel inside our body. Now, for the last part, I would like to show you these situations here. Give a look to the people walking, and especially here, the woman in black. Okay, you see that everybody is walking well, except this lady here. What happens? Okay, give a look to this guy here. This is the same. Okay. Then what happens here? It's clear that for the woman walking here in front, they are walking without thinking, without taking care where they are putting their feet. Okay, this is just an automatic reflex. They are walking and it works pretty well. While here, you have to take care. You have to take care. That means that here, it's possible to walk without thinking, while from that line here, it's better to watch your step if you want to walk in a safe way. Okay, then how to account this difference of behaviors? And the seminal idea we have developed comes from neuroscience. Professor Berthoz and Thierry Pozzo and Lefort shown in the late 80s that any motion you are considering for a person walking, running, biking, riding, skiing, and so on and so forth, in all the cases, the gaze, and more precisely, the head is stabilized in orientation. The orientation remains fixed. And then from this statement, which is an empirical statement, we ask ourselves, does head stabilization contribute to the locomotion robustness? And we address that question by comparing two very simple mechanical systems which modelize the roughly walking person. And we consider two systems. One where there is a mass here which is articulated by 2 degrees of freedom here. There are the degrees of freedom of the head, the angle, like that one here, one like this, and another one like this. Okay, then we have mainly 2 degrees of freedom in the neck to move the head. Okay, and we compare that system here with another one, which is with the rigid neck, without any neck. That means that the motion of the head is perfectly rigidly attached to the body. Okay, then there are two systems. We tune all the parameters to make this system working on a flat terrain, very, very flat terrain. This is a tedious, tuning of the parameter, but at the very end, you have two controls, one for the system with articulated neck, and one for the system with rigid neck. All the system works very, very nicely on a flat system. That means that if you are considering the Poincaré map here, it's possible to prove that on the flat system, these two controls are stabilizing. Okay? Okay, then we have two systems which are stabilized on a flat floor. And now you introduce some perturbation here on the floor. And it appears by doing that, at some stage, you will escape the attractive cycle here, and then the system will fall. Okay, then you escape the potential fields of this attractive cycle, and the system, the walker, will fall. Okay. And then now let us compare the two curves, which is the time to fall, then the mean number of steps before falling, according to the ground texture. Then we define the ground texture by the level of perturbation of the floor. And it appears that you have two curves which are quite similar. One, the blue one with the head stabilization, and the red one with the rigid neck. If you are considering very huge perturbation here in that on the right of this curve, then it appears that the robot will fall after perhaps 10 or 20 steps. Okay, but what is much more interesting is that when you are considering small perturbation here, let us see, for instance, with for 0.01, it appears that the rigid neck system will fall after 50 steps, while for the same value of the perturbation, the head stabilization system will fall after more than 1 million of steps. Here, this is a logarithmic scale. 50 steps against 1 million of steps. It seems that the head stabilization contribute to the walking stabilization. Then this is just comparing two very simplified models. Then in some sense, this is truly empirism, and we try to understand that. But these first results suggest that yes, the stabilization of the head contribute to the locomotion robustness. And more recently, Meni Benaleg tried to better explore the mechanical effect here. And there is a second result that converge to the fact that there are some causality results that explain why the head stabilization contribute to the locomotion robustness. Okay, then this is a recent paper that appears in the International Journal of Robotic Research. Okay, then now I would like to converge to the conclusion. And the first conclusion of this presentation is to say that until now, we were considering the humanoid robots design by how to control the locomotion. How to control the locomotion, I don't want to enter into the details, but roughly speaking, the most fruitful concept to make the robot walking has been the zero moment point concept. That means that a kind of the center of pressure and how to control a specific point which is under the feet, okay, to stabilize the control. This is what I call the upward approach. While here, what is suggested by these new results is that the control of the locomotion is perhaps within the head and not within the feet. And then there are some consequences of that, because in the design of the robot themselves, we have to consider to place, for instance, some sensors here, which are equivalent to the vestibular sensor, to consider the vision, to contribute to the stabilization of the locomotion. But all this consideration implies that to completely revisit the design of the robot themselves. The second conclusion is that robotics is definitely the target is to explore what we can call the embodied motion intelligence. And to do that, we have to conduce a pluridisciplinary approach, as it has been illustrated here by the combination between neuroscience and robotics. And as a third conclusion, I didn't mention in this talk the modern techniques of machine learning. And the key issue of the machine learning is that and the power of the new machine learning techniques involving neural networks, deep learning, etc., reinforcement learning, and so on and so forth, can be summarized by the fact that there are optimization techniques which are based on the absence of model and mainly based on data. We can summarize that these approaches are data-based approach, which are very successful for intelligence artificial in artificial vision and so on and so forth. While in all my presentation here, I was insisting about model-based approach to introduce by considering the geometry of the system, we provide models which are effective to control the motion of the system. And in some sense, if we want to make a link between the robotics and machine learning, I consider that what we can call robot learning is in fact a matter of geometry learning. And the difficulty in the classical techniques of machine learning is to introduce the type of constraints like the differential equations, the famous differential equation x dot sine theta minus y dot cosine theta equals 0, how to introduce that knowledge in the database approach. Okay. And with this remark, very general remark, I conclude my presentation and I thank you for your attention. I would like just to finish by thanking my former team, Gepetto Atlas, before I moved in Paris. And I hope to see you soon in Paris. Bye-bye, and thank you for your attention.